Welcome to Bloomberg Power Players, the series that talks to some of the most influential figures in the world of sport about their rise, the success of their sport, and what the future holds. Women's football, it's broken all kinds of ceilings, and with that comes an exponential growth in revenue around the globe. All eyes will be on the 2023 Women's World Cup in Australia and New Zealand. That's where the heroines of women's football will showcase to the world what they're made of. Born and bred with purpose. That's the story of how LA's Angel City was born. It's truly inspiring. Some of Hollywood's leading ladies decided to join forces, empower female footballers, and they founded one of the newest clubs in the National Women's Soccer League. That was 2020. Natalie Portman, Eva Longoria, Serena Williams, they entrusted Julie Uhrman with the mission, leading their team into a transformative future. Julie tells us how she brought her wealth of experience from tech, gaming, and entertainment industry to her pivotal role as president of Angel City.
Julie Uhrman, it's so great to be with you here at Angel City headquarters. So much has happened over the last couple of years. I want to go back to the beginning of this journey, as it were. How do you, like lifelong entrepreneur working in the tech world, find yourself in the sports world?
Well, I started as an athlete, and I'm a lifelong sports fan. So when I was presented with the opportunity by Natalie Portman and Karen Norman to help them bring the best athletes in the world at what I now consider to be the best sport in the world to the best sports city in the world, it was really a no-brainer to say yes and to try to then figure out how to go about doing it.
What sort of clicks in your business brain with this opportunity? Because you're building something from the ground up. It's very ambitious. Like, what are the tools that you're sort of leveraging there?
The focus from the beginning was fans. Like, how do you build a community and how do you get fans to come to your event? Whether it's a men's professional event, a movie premiere, right? Or even to a barbecue at the beach, there's so much to do. So it's how can you build an incredible, entertaining experience to bring fans, but then also make them come back regardless of what the score is. And that led us to really focus on our why. Why do you want to care about this club that is bigger and maybe even more important than the actual product, which is football?
Being in Los Angeles, and we'll talk a lot about this through the course of this conversation, opens up the possibility for a roster of investors and partners that had never really been seen before in the sports world. Talk to me about putting together that roster and then how that evolves going forward.
Yeah, it wasn't actually intentional. We didn't seek out a majority female ownership group of primarily athletes and actresses and actors. They understood the message that we were selling, right? It was, we wanted to build something that was bigger than the game, and we wanted to lead with purpose. We also knew it was important to drive to profitability because that revenue drives the impact that we want to make. And in order to do that at the highest level, we have to build ourselves as a platform. And celebrities and athletes understood that concept of Angel City as a platform. We stand for equity and impact, but we want to drive attention and awareness to drive revenue that then can go back into the club, can go back into the players, that can also go back into the community. Celebrities and athletes build on their platform every day, whether it's promoting their movies or promoting their event or promoting their social impact cause. So the message resonated with them. And then they wanted to be part of something which we felt would be groundbreaking. And
so how do you activate them? Because, I mean, you've talked before about, these Zoom calls with, it's like Brady Bunch on steroids, all these different people. And I would imagine a lot of what they say is, how can I help? You've got to have a good answer to that. So what is that answer?
Well, first we ask them what's important to them, right? And where do they want to lean in? It's important that they wear our kit. It's important that they promote us on social media because that drives attention and awareness for our impact and for our club. But we also want to know, what's important to them as a human being. You know, we have built a social impact platform that addresses equity, essentials, and education in our community. So we find out what's important to them, and then they can lean in to those activations with us.
And so as you moved toward, again, sort of going back to the early days, you moved toward this first game. It's building, you're building a community. I mean, I remember going to events really months, maybe even a year before the team first hit the pitch, before there were even players, you know, who were playing for the team. What was that strategy around merchandise and community, and how did you come up with that plan?
Step one was meeting the community, so they knew that there was a women's professional sports team coming to LA. But step two was learning from them. What did they want to be a part of? What values were important to them? Who were they? We wanted to build the club with them, because at the end of the day, we want them to support the club year round and not just for 12 to 15 games a year. So we did hold events literally from the moment we announced in July of 2020 to the moment we took the pitch in April of 22, where we spent time with our community, educating them about our values, what our purpose was, and then building this community through the sale of merchandise so they can rep their pride in Angel City.
There's momentum that's building and building and building up until that first match, but you never really know, are people going to show up? What's it going to feel like? Tell me about that first game.
I mean, it was magical. I could only control 2 of our 3 goals for the first game. We wanted to be a sellout crowd. We wanted to get global attention and awareness, and we wanted to win. Because it just makes the story better, but also it shows that all of the hard work can result in the most fantastic of outcomes. We had a sold out crowd, a majority of our owners were there, and these players played an amazing game after a really hard series of preseason games. But the whole world paid attention, and what they saw was a sold out game for women's football, and that is not an anomaly. That is becoming the norm.
And so as you're building that, you've been a very successful person in business. What are the comps that you're looking at, either in the sports world or elsewhere, where you look and say, all right, they hit on something either culturally or from a marketing perspective? Like, who were your North Stars in that regard?
I mean, there really were no comps in women's sports at the time. There are a lot now, and we can talk about how this moment has really progressed into a movement. But at the time, there weren't comps. So we actually went back in time and we said, how can you build the excitement and the energy around a sporting event here in Los Angeles, where there are so many great teams and championship teams? So we went back to the 1980s Lakers, the Showtime era, where Jack Nicholson would come to every match and sit courtside. How can we recreate that? How can we get you to come to a match, whether you are coming to see our owners, you're coming to see our players, or you're coming to be part of a community? That's what we looked at as far as the goal.
You're at a moment now where people are definitely coming to you for advice. You know, we're going to see more teams. I want to talk about expansion in a little while. But what do you look back on and say that was a key decision?
Unequivocally, it's the team that I built. We were not limited by what was or what has been. We weren't limited by what is done in sports and what's not done in sports. This is a team that intentionally thought bigger. And so the best decision I ever made was the staff of people that are building Angel City.
How'd you find them?
I found them everywhere.
Yeah. You were like hitting people up on LinkedIn, if I recall, right?
Our head of revenue, Jessica Smith, I reached out to cold on LinkedIn. Heard she had a great reputation, was really strong with sponsors and brands, worked at a number of different sports leagues, and I just hit her up on LinkedIn and said, I'm doing something special and I'd love you to be a part of it. Can I talk to you about it? Had no idea she'd ever respond, and yet, here we are.
Coming up, Julie Uhrman on what she considers to be the fundamentals in the industry.
How do we create an environment where our players feel safe, not only to do their job, but also to use their voice?
Football, it's always been a game of suspense and drama on and off the pitch. It's battling negative reports from corruption to racism. When it comes to the women's leagues, Those reports are around toxic and abusive behaviors. And that's where Julie wants to use her voice to develop Angel City as a platform. It champions diversity, equality, and inclusion.
So let's talk about the state of the game, because this club was born into a league and into a sport that had, shall we say, a twisting and turning history. And then it comes into a reality that is pretty terrible in a lot of ways. A report is commissioned, a lot comes out about the league. How did you experience that, and what was the tone and tenor of the club as all that was going on?
Yeah, I mean, we came into the league on the heels of some investigations about the abuse in the NWSL, the systemic abuse that went on for years and years and years. We approached it from the perspective of, how do we provide the best safety for our players? How do we create an environment where our players feel safe, not only to do their job, but also to use their voice? So we built an organization giving the players the tools to be able to voice any, concerns or criticisms, but also wanted to have a strong voice at the board of the NWSL to say, how do we make sure at a league level that this doesn't happen again?
And to that point, I mean, you as a club, because of the success you had, because of the notoriety you had, did you feel more pressure or more of a sense of responsibility to be a leader in that regard?
We wanted to lead by example. We wanted to build a football club for the future, and that was about giving our players a sense of safety and security. And the hope is that the other clubs would look at what we've built and fill the gaps that they had, but also to set the code of conducts and the private email address so that players can report something. You need to make them feel safe in their environment so they can be their absolute best.
It has been this series of investigations, this series of disclosures. How do you sort of keep the faith throughout that, knowing that there's a lot that people have to work through?
We focus on Angel City Football Club. We focus on building a safe and professional environment for our players. We focus on building something that others can follow and emulate. We certainly have had players that have been involved in the abuses that were described in the past, and we want to make sure we support them through it. But ultimately, we want to build the best organization, and that's what we focus on.
It's interesting when you start to think about setting that expectation for being women-led, because as I understand it, even the idea of hiring a male manager for the team, people were like, whoa, that's not the Angel City vibe. So how does that sort of continue to play into decisions that you make?
I mean, it's important to note that we are a diverse and inclusive team, and that is important to us. So we don't want to just have women around the table. Of course, we want to have men around the table. But we're also an organization that's committed to bringing more women into the sport and giving them opportunities that they have not had, whether that's at the general manager level, whether that's at the head coach level, whether it's at the president level. So it's not about forsaking one for the other, but it's making sure that we're creating access and opportunity for women, and also building the absolute best team that we can. I mean, we just signed a player, Katie Johnson, who went to USC, who's from Southern California, who played for the women's Mexican national team. So we're thoughtful about how do we represent our community in all aspects of Angel City. Sometimes it takes longer than we'd like, but it is an important metric that we judge ourselves on.
So let's talk about Angel City and its effect, being in Los Angeles, and its effect on the NWSL, because I think when the history of this league is written, it was a critical moment for elevating the game. Did you expect that from the beginning? And what was the actual impact, you think, on the broader league?
Well, we knew what we were going to do. We knew we were going to sell out stadiums. I didn't know we'd have 16,000 season ticket holders. I didn't know that we'd have over 19,000 seats sold for every single game. But the impact in the NWSL, to your point, was pretty significant. 38% of all ticketing revenue was Angel City revenue. The ability to see sold out stadiums in the NWSL carried on into the playoffs, where San Diego was selling out stadiums. And every single playoff match this year saw greater than 20,000 seats sold, which you didn't see during the regular season. So I believe the impact was, if they can do it, we can do it. Right? If they can sell it out, we can sell it out. If they're going to invest money and the returns are there, then we should invest, because the returns will be there also.
And so tell me about that process of then essentially triggering, in some ways, more interest from an ownership perspective. We are at a moment where expansion is happening. You've got other notable women coming in and leading the groups in a way that candidly didn't happen before. What does that look like? Because valuations are going up. The anticipation, the expectations are really going up as well.
There's no better investment today than women's football, whether that's as a new owner or as a sponsor getting behind one of these clubs. You just saw it in the news that we've sold 2 new franchise rights for NWSL clubs north of $50 million. That's north of a 10 times increase from when I came in, from when San Diego came in, from when Kansas City came in to the league. And the reason for that is the attention and awareness that women's football is getting. These are the best athletes in the world. They are incredible storytellers. The product on the pitch is equal to or better than a lot of their male counterpart leagues around the world. And you're starting to see it in real dollars.
Next up, we hear from Julie on how she plans to translate interest in women's football into investment. Welcome back to Bloomberg Power Players. The 2023 Women's World Cup is expected to be the most watched women's soccer event ever. The challenge for nations around the world is to capitalize on the event and to translate that into an interest in investment, a sustainable future. Here's Angel City's Julie Uhrman on how to do just that.
Big moment coming up later this year, the Women's World Cup. What does it mean for the sport and for Angel City in particular?
I mean, we're going to break records again. You're already starting to see the excitement and the interest for the World Cup. FIFA has turned down broadcast bids by countries that aren't valuing the product. Australia's already moved their home opener into a stadium that's twice as big as the one that they had planned. The interest and excitement for this World Cup will be bigger than it's ever been before. And I think all women's leagues are going to garner the benefit of that on the heels of it.
How do you think about the state of women's soccer, especially in this country, given everything that's happened, and especially because there is equal pay and in some measure that people have fought for a long time?
I mean, it's just getting bigger. I mean, if you look at the National Women's Soccer League, the championship game this past year had over a 56% increase in viewership. Over 915,000 people signed into CBS in the evening to watch the championship game. And that was during a World Series game. Imagine what would happen if it wasn't one of the World Series games. You've seen Angel City sell out 4 games in our inaugural season. That's 22,000 seats. Even San Diego Wave FC sold out their home opener against us, which was 32,000 seats. So what we're seeing globally is happening here in the National Women's Soccer League, but it's starting to spread out everywhere.
And so when you think about what's happening in the U.S., it's an interesting moment for football, right? Because for so many years, men's football has been chasing Europe and chasing the rest of the world. Now it feels like that's flipped. And European clubs on the women's side are now chasing the U.S. First of all, do you agree with that? And sort of what is the dynamic that is building from that?
I absolutely think we're leading, or at least we started this movement, which is women's sports deserves to be treated like men's sports. They deserve the same level of investment. They deserve the same level of media attention, they deserve the same level of journalism attention, right? So we were very unapologetic in saying that it wasn't okay that the best athletes in the world weren't getting the same level of attention from the world when the results were so much better than their male counterparts. So we beat that drum pretty loudly, and the results were obvious in 4 sellout games and our sold out, home opener. But the rest of the world is also following. You've seen 2 sellouts of Camp Nou when Chelsea plays Arsenal, either at Stamford Bridge or at Emirates. You're seeing north of 40,000 fans. The Euros this year had the highest attendance ever, the highest viewership ever. So people need to stop saying, why not, and just do it, because the results are there every time. You haven't once heard about, we're going to sell out a women's match, and it didn't sell out. You're not hearing about failures. You're actually only hearing about the successes because there's such an appetite and interest in women's football. They just now know they can go, and it's going to be treated at the same level. Therefore, it's valued the same. Therefore, they know they're going to get a great experience. Therefore, they go.
You talked about the rise in valuations. Tell me about what you're seeing from a revenue and profitability standpoint. I know you have a goal to be profitable. How is that evolving? How are you doing in terms of sort of reaching those goals?
I mean, it's getting better every year. I mean, we are committed to giving back to the community. So 10% of all of our sponsorship dollars goes back into the community. And that's a goal of ours that's just as important as our top line revenue. We have over $50 million of committed sponsorship revenue in Angel City. That's $5 million of impact. We sold out 4 games last year. We want to sell out more this year, right? We have 29 sponsor partners. I mean, those are all metrics that are really important to us, but equally important to us is the fact that we gave out 450,000 meals last year with DoorDash, or 1 million pounds of food with Sprouts, or with Gatorade, trained 70 female coaches, did 5,000 hours of soccer skills for the youth with Yamava and Gatorade. Like, those things are just as important to us. And each year, those metrics are just going to get higher and higher for us.
Do you feel like football has come into a position where it's actually influencing other women's professional sports? I mean, WNBA has actually been around for longer than the NWSL, certainly, and yet it feels like there's more momentum around football than maybe other sports. How is that sort of playing out through the rest of the ecosystem?
I mean, what's special about football is that it is a global sport. It doesn't just exist in the United States. So Angel City is playing in a global landscape. So as international teams raise the bar, we want to raise the bar here. So it is different. We are leading because our ecosystem is so much bigger. And I do think the attention that women's football is getting, whether it's the Euros or the World Cup or Angel City more specifically, is having an impact on other sports. We just saw it in women's IPL. 5 franchises sold for $575 million. They just closed media rights for $117 million over 5 years. You see women's professional rugby going from 1 sponsor in 2017 to 5 sponsors this year. UEFA says that sponsorship dollars are going to increase 6-fold in the next 10 years. I mean, this is a trend that's catching on everywhere, and it's really just going to grow. I mean, this is 50% of the world can more easily access this great sport.
Take your own temperature at this moment versus where you were when you started this. Are your dreams bigger? Has it exceeded where you thought you would be at this moment? And what's next?
We definitely exceeded all of our expectations and our goals. I think there is a general level of excitement for what's also possible. Like, how do you continue to raise the bar, right? This isn't a moment in time. So our goals are bigger. They're more ambitious. But we've also had an entire year to learn, and now we can apply those learnings to this year, both the product on pitch, but also the product we put out in the world.
Julie Uhrman, thank you so much for spending some time with me today.
Thank you for having me.
With a vision like that, I'm sure the story of Angel City and its players is inspiring for young women across the globe to take on adversities and challenges and go for the goal. That's another power player for you. We'll be back soon with another influential figure from the world of sport.